Hi, Facebook. Welcome to Comic Spot. Once again, I'm promoting this club. It's a brand new club in North Hollywood. If you're going up and down that freeway, take the exit to North Hollywood and go visit Comedy Chateau. You got to look it up. He's on Facebook. His name is Felix McNulty, and he's doing great things with a new club. Okay, so today on Comic Spot, you guys know I'm a military veteran of the Army from 73 to 76. It's no big deal. I just counted money and yodeled in the Alps. Okay. I'm a woman. It's not, that's it. Today we have a real veteran, four branches of the service, a decorated soldier who is now, he's also decorated in the acting world. You can look him up on IMBD. I put some pictures up there. His main reason for being here is the reason I found him. I was minding my own business, watching the news. He pops up and I'm like, I wonder if he'll come on and talk. So today we're putting aside all egos, all accomplishments. We're going to get into who is Yonel Dorelis, and I hope I pronounced that name correctly. He's sitting right there in the other box. He doesn't look at all like me. You can't get us confused. I am all about supporting our military and veterans and all about suicide prevention. If you know me, you know that there's been a few times I've been in relationships that have pushed me to the brink. And if there's things that happen to military that don't happen to others, not to say we're not all struggling, especially in a pandemic, but this man is my hero 4 times in the military. He's my hero in acting. He's my hero in fighting suicide prevention. So let's get to this. Let's chop it up with my friend, my new friend, Yonel Dorelis. Hi.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, Linda. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's so amazing. I'm so glad you're here. You're a veteran of 4 branches of the military. I don't even have a tree with one branch.
Yeah, that was. I've had an interesting and highly undistinguished military career. I'm probably highlighted by some of the worst timing you could have. Long story short, my intention was to be a Marine officer, a Marine aviator. Just was a Marine lieutenant waiting to go to flight school back in 1984. And I'll keep this kind of brief. They basically told us they had too many aviators, and none of us were going. Those of us who were had contracts to be pilots weren't going to get to flight school for 18 to 24 months. Fellow lieutenants. Father was an admiral in the Navy. Naval aviation encompasses the Marine Corps, Navy, and Coast Guard. I guess he told his dad. His dad walked over to his Marine counterpart, asked what was going on. They figured it out, gave a bunch of us a drug deal, allowed about 100, 150 of us to inter-service transfer to the Navy. And so, a few months later, I was in Pensacola as an ensign instead of a second lieutenant. Made it through flight school, flew helicopters in the Navy for about 8 years. Thought I wanted to enter the corporate world. Gave that a shot. Didn't work out too well for me. I didn't like it. I knew I made a mistake pretty quick. But I couldn't get back in the Navy, and I was back in New York working. Just put out some paperwork to the various reserve units in the area. The Army Guard came up first. So I flew with the Army Guard for a few years, about 4 or 5 years. Then an opportunity came to swap to the Air Guard. They had a rescue unit out on the eastern tip of Long Island in West Hampton doing this really cool thing called combat search and rescue. And I was lucky enough to get a slot there, transferred there, started doing that. Was really great mission, something that was really near and dear to my heart. And about a year and a half into that, the opportunity to go back on active duty came. And just decided I missed doing that for a living, and took that opportunity and stayed for another 13 years. My timing was perfect in that regard because, I went back on active duty in 98, was doing some stuff overseas. And then 9/11 happened, which was obviously, as a New Yorker, a big deal to me. My brother survived both World Trade Center bombings. I knew people who we lost that day. It was a big deal to me. And, the rest is history. I spent basically the next 7, 8 years of war on and off and then retired in 2011 and decided to pursue some other things. The acting, I still fly as an air ambulance pilot. But the big thing I tried to get involved with was veteran suicide in my community. The Air Force Combat Rescue community was kind of brutal. We lost a lot of people to their demons, and I lost several really good friends. Interestingly enough, guys I really looked up to, guys who were really the linchpins of the unit downrange in combat, guys who I thought were better pilots, braver, tougher than me, everything. So it really caught me by surprise to lose that caliber of guys who are at the top of the food chain, so to speak. So I just, it bothered me. I had some adjustment issues, but it never got really dark for me. And it really was, but I started really looking into why I thought guys had, why it got so bad for so many guys. And was lucky enough to find a few organizations that I've been involved with that work hard to prevent veteran suicide. And so that's kind of what I've been focusing on as I keep my relationship with the military. You have to move on. You can't live in the past, but, that allows me, that's what I can do. That's how I can still stay in the fight. As much as I miss it, I can't go fly helicopters downrange anymore and pick up wounded and hurt guys and do that job, which I love so much. But this is what I can do to try to help, some of my fellow veterans stay alive and live happy and fruitful lives, which they deserve.
Yes. I'd like to touch on men and women in the military going through things unique to the military that make it difficult to transition out of the military and make trying to get benefits, fighting for benefits, and fighting to readjust to life, fighting their demons they acquire by fighting for our country.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not an expert on benefits by any means, but the military is a bureaucracy, the government's a bureaucracy. They don't make any of that stuff easy. They put the burden on the service member to prove conditions, disabilities, I mean, in my case, and I think I was pretty lucky considering talking to guys like my father-in-law and other veterans. I mean, it took 3-4 years to get my VA stuff settled and corrected. And it took a few, bureaucratic, and honestly, I think I'm, that's almost laughable to some of the guys who've had to deal with this stuff for years and years and years, but it's a bureaucracy. They don't make it easy. Also, we've never been good at that. The nations just aren't good at that. They're good at sending people to war. They're good at the military's job is to train you and get you ready to do the job. They're not good at the other stuff. They're not good at helping you integrate back into society. We can go back to World War II. I'm a history major. I mean, how many people talk to will tell you, oh, your kids I grew up with whose fathers used to wake up with nightmares and things. People back in those days, you just carried your own water and you dealt with it. Then we move on to Korea, Vietnam, and we're all pretty familiar with that kind of stuff. But I just think countries aren't prepared to do that. The current wars we're involved. We've been at war for 20 years, okay? And you have people who have been back to back to back to back combat tours, right? We're in uncharted territory in terms of what effects that really has, and so, we're just ill prepared for it. I mean, the government, the military, they try, but the grade they're going to get from me anyway is a big fat F-, and they're not ready to deal with it. So it's just the way it is. So, they're trying and it's tough, but I think veterans really only have each other to rely on, to be able to talk with people who've had those shared experiences that you've had, who understand it. Because once you leave the military in a country like the United States, where less than 1 or 2% of the people actually serve, you are really isolated. And I think that's the biggest problem is that veterans feel isolated when they leave. They're away from their surrogate family, their sense of worth, finding a new purpose. I know for me, the analogy I used to use was you feel like you're in a life raft in the middle of the ocean because you can't talk to people who understand you. And the family, as much as they love you and you love them, they can't grasp that. And also they dealt with their own set of issues. My wife raised my kids by herself for the most part for almost a decade, so it's tough. And for me, it's broken my heart because I've just lost some really good, great, wonderful people. And it's at the point now where you'll get a phone call from somebody you haven't spoke to in a while, and it's not somebody going, "Hey man, what's up? Just want to see how you're doing." It's bad news, and so it's an epidemic. The 22 a day number, that's kind of a bullshit number, if you pardon my French. I think it's higher, and it's tough. It's tough.
It is. I've been trying to adjust from getting out of the military to the life I have. And then in 96, I got hit by a drunk driver and I have brain trauma. And when I had that, it brought up all the PTSD from things I endured as a woman in the military in the 70s.
Right. Yeah.
So no. It's hard to cope. And I wasn't even in battle.
Well, yeah. I mean, PTSD isn't exclusive to the military at all. I mean, any trauma could leave you with PTSD. And again, anything I'm not an expert by any means in any of this. I'm not a professional, a doctor. I'm just a knuckle dragging pilot. So, but just what, the research tells us PTSD is not mutually exclusive to the military. It could be, any trauma you've suffered plus, fire. I still work in the medical field. I'm in the EMS field. The practitioners I work with deal with it as well. Law enforcement, my buddies, I have several friends who are career firefighters. They have it. We talk about it. But again, all of us operate in a paradigm where seeking help isn't always going to work out well for you, and we're also people who don't like to seek help. So a lot of the times the best therapy is sitting around shooting the shit with each other over a beer or club soda, whatever, but yeah, it's not mutually exclusive. So I understand, plus TBI, you had the equivalent of TBI. All those things are part of it. It's classic stuff. It's not, again, I want to be clear, PTSD or any post-traumatic stress is not exclusive to the military by any means. Anybody who's had a significant trauma could have it.
And you mentioned that your wife she donated 10 years on her own in solitude, raising the children while you were.
She's been married. We were married for a long time. We're separated right now, but that she's probably the best mom I've ever seen, and she raised my kids, by herself during my multiple absences, and both my girls turned out great. I have 4 beautiful grandchildren, so she gets the bulk of the credit, without a doubt. And again, that's another, that's all. And then, just reintegrating into family stuff is tough, just coming back from deployment takes a couple of months just to get back in, because they've been handling everything by themselves. And if you come in like a bull in a china shop, trying to reassert dominance or leadership of the family, it just never works. You learn over time that doesn't work too good. So, it's, the transition from the military is a tough thing, that it's a process. And if people think, especially people who spent a significant time in the military or people who've served in combat, think, they're going to leave the next day and everything's going to be good, you're in for a rude awakening, and so you need to prepare yourself for it. You need to, have some plans and understand, talk to other people who can explain to you some of the really weird feelings you're going to have. You know, the biggest of which, and I call it a dirty little secret, is most people miss it. I make no bones about it. I miss being downrange. I miss flying in combat. I mean, I have a philosophy on that I'm sure smarter people than me will poo-poo, but I think, most people, I've spoken to veterans as far back as World War II, a lot of people kind of liked it. And I think that's primal because as human beings, since the first time a caveman picked up a rock and smashed another caveman in the head with it, it's sort of kind of in our DNA to fight. And and some of us, I didn't know. I mean, grew up with a single mom. My mom wanted a nice Jewish doctor or a lawyer, and I turned it out to be a Marine, and I turned out to, I was a warrior. I liked that life, and even being 10 years retired, I miss that life. I miss being around those people. I have a hard time sometimes dealing with, those who didn't do the same things I did. I work hard to be good at not being a jerk. But sometimes I just have a hard time because I miss being around people who think like me, who view the world through the same prism I view the world. So that's all part of it. You do something for 30 years and stop, 20 years, 10 years, 8 years, 4 years, and then you come back and it's always not that easy. It's not that easy, but I think the guys miss it. The camaraderie, you'll never have that again. The camaraderie is amazing. You're willing to risk your life for people you don't even like. I mean, everybody doesn't get along in the military. It's like any other place. There's people in your unit, you don't like them, they don't like you, blah, blah, blah. But when push comes to shove, you're going to risk your life for each other. There's no other place in the world where, except maybe in a fire department or a police department, EMS, some sort of first responder environment where you have to count on each other. There's nowhere else in the world that's going to happen. And when you lose that, come into society where people, don't have really any loyalty to each other, it's a rude awakening. And some people really have a hard time with that.
That's so true. So you belong to your life. Let me just stop before I transition into the organization we're here to plug. That that I noticed on TV and got a hold of you because you were on TV. So I want to stop for a second, and say I am so thankful for your service, and I'm so thankful for you being a warrior for a great cause that you're going to talk about. I'm so thankful that your wife helped raise your children while you were fighting for our country. And I can't thank you enough for really, 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 really serving our country. I just want to underscore this whole thing about when you sign on the dotted line, you sign. Listen, like I said, I make jokes about it. I was yodeling in the Alps.
Listen, I get it, and I appreciate the kind words, but certainly, I'll only speak for myself. It was the greatest job in the world. I would have done it for free. And, sometimes I think I scammed the government out of a check for 28 years. I mean, they paid me to do something I love, to work with some of the greatest people I've had the opportunity to work with. And I consider my military service, as cliche as it sounds, a complete honor and privilege. It was the privilege and highlight of my life to do what I did and serve the country, wear the cloth of the nation, whatever cliche phrase you want to use. I just had a great time. Let me fly it. The best analogy I get is somebody gives you the keys to a Ferrari. I was flying around, visited X number of countries, lived in X number of countries, saw places I never would have saw otherwise as a kid growing up in New York. I mean, they're not places I would have thought to go on vacation. That's for sure. I mean, there was a few. I mean, we had some really good deals too. But I mean, for the most part, I've seen places that I never would have seen, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful for that. So thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. Not trying to minimize that, but in my case, man, I loved it. It was the greatest gig ever.
Yes. I do comedy for the military and veterans whenever I can send anybody my way. If one person or 1,000 need to laugh, I'm there.
I appreciate it. I mean, that's what I miss most about the military is just sitting around laughing at the absurdity of the situations we found ourselves in a lot of times. So, yeah, I mean, that's another thing too. People don't realize that. I think most people tell you in the military they never laughed as much. There was always something to laugh at, somebody to laugh at, or
Yes.
get laughed at yourself. And I think that was a big part of it. I mean, I left all the time, even in some of the most dire situations. Humor is a wonderful thing. It can save your life and your mental health as well. So I think what you're doing is awesome as well, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Will you talk about your nonprofit that we're here to plug,
Yeah.
please?
So the event you saw me on TV plug in was the Irreverent Warrior Silkies Hike. Those are events that take place. I think we're up to 66 cities this year. They're doing one in Hawaii. There's going to be one in Puerto Rico, and I think we're actually moving international. They're talking about doing one or two in Europe, as well, with expats as well as some of our allies out there. So the Silkies Hike is simply this: if you might remember this from your time, the PT shorts and were those old silk running shorts, Ranger panties, they called them in the Army, and they're called Silkies in the Marine Corps. Yeah, and they're obscenely too tight and too small and tight fitting. And so the gentleman who started the organization, Donnie O'Malley, just thought it'd be fun for guys to just hike in those combat boots, no shirt, and hike, and as a way to raise awareness about veteran suicide. So that idea took off. Again, we're up to 60 something cities. I went to the hike in New York a couple of years ago because I was back in New York, and I've been reading about it, and I wanted to go to one of those hikes, and I just wanted to do it in New York since that's where I'm from. I thought it'd be fun. I did it, and I realized it saves lives, because what it does is, when I didn't know anyone there, but within 5 minutes, I was laughing and joking and BSing, just like as you would do, in my old unit. So you realize that you're kind of among your tribe. You're the people that get you, the people you understand. And I realize it saved lives, because what it does is, if you're that person who's in that dark hole, and I'm pretty graphic about this, if you're at the table and you have your Glock and a bottle of Jack Daniels on the table and you're thinking about taking your own life, eating your gun, you just come out to this thing and you realize, wait, there's other people like me. There's people I can laugh, I can joke, and at least for that day, and hopefully you develop, you make friends, you now start to have a support system. And so hopefully that'll bring you out of that dark place back into the light, and help prevent suicide. That's what it does. And it raises awareness, because certainly in New York, you're marching down Fifth Avenue. There was like 300 people at the hike I went to, various stages of undress with their little shorts in New York, and, all kinds of flags. And people ask, what's going on? What are you guys doing? And you tell them. So you're able to raise awareness and let people know that veteran suicide is a big deal. So I wanted to have one here in Vegas, because we have a huge veterans community here in Vegas. We have Nellis Air Force Base. We have several reserve units, and a lot of veterans retire here because of Nevada's, no state tax. Nevada's an attractive place to retire. So I thought it would be a good idea. And I got with the organization, said, hey, I want to spearhead the Vegas hike. They said, knock yourself out. They have a checklist. They're very organized. So, they're very organized with fundraising. They're 501(c)(3). They play by all those rules. Or 501(c)(3). I screw it up all the time, but I'm sure your audience knows what I mean. Yeah. Anyway, it's a legit nonprofit. So, I just went through the process of planning, coordinating the hike. We were able to pull it off last December 5th. It worked out well. I had some wonderful people help out, volunteer with public relations. So they got me hooked up with the various networks here in town, the various local news agencies, radios. So I got to get the word out, and it turned out to be a great event. We had probably about 100, 120 folks out there marching, police escort, Bozar Chevrolet volunteered some safety vehicles. I mean, just a huge amount of community support. And it worked out well, and we're on track to having another hike this year, Saturday, December 4th again. We're going to have it probably start at Battlefield Vegas, which is behind the Circus on Sammy Davis. We walk down to the Vegas sign and back. And hopefully this year, if COVID restrictions lift, we'll be able to stop at a couple of venues and have some fun, because part of the march is usually stop at a few places. Some places will provide food or give you some good deals on food, and hit a couple of bars. And, there is some alcohol involved in this event. But it's a good event that raises awareness. So that's one organization that I'm passionate and involved with. I'm also involved with an organization called Merging Vets and Players, MVP, where sports agent Jay Glazer and Nate Boyer, who was a professional football player and former Green Beret, what they've done is they bring veterans and former professional athletes together, because they found that a lot of professional athletes, when they leave their respective sports, go through a lot of the same thing. The suicide rate among ex-NFL players is pretty staggering. It's pretty horrifying, actually.
Not to mention the CTEs.
Right. So that, here in Vegas, the chapter, we meet at Randy Couture's gym, Extreme Couture, on Fridays. We've been doing hybrid, both virtual and in-person sessions. And then we work out for an hour, and then we have what's called a huddle, where everybody talks and, gets whatever's in their system out, talks about their accomplishments, their failures, the things that are bothering them. But they're among people who understand them. In Vegas, it's mostly a lot of ex-fighters, but we have a lot of we have some NFL guys and stuff. It's amazing to see how similar the transition is and the difficulties, so that's bonded us together. I mean, I've become friends with some fighters, some really, really tough dudes, who just turned out to be wonderful people. Just Randy Couture himself, his son, it's just amazing people, man, who are passionate. Randy's a veteran, and we're really passionate about this. And these, I've got a chance to meet these amazing athletes and just, and it does the same thing. It brings you together to talk to people who understand your experience. And that, I think, is the biggest problem, because even when dealing with professionals, you talk about some of your experiences and they look at you like you have like a third eye, cyclops eye in the middle of your head. And so you shy away from that. So anyway, those are the two organizations, Merging Vets and Players and Irreverent Warriors. You can go to mergingvetsandplayers.com or irreverentwarriors.com, donate. It'll get, it'll get to the charity. These charities aren't paying salaries to their executives or anything like that. The stuff gets to the veterans and the people who need it. And mainly it's about providing environments for veterans to get together and just to raise awareness about, what a real epidemic veteran suicide is.
I know that you've, as usual, brilliant, well-spoken answers. I want to acknowledge that. It's not about me. I'm just moving to the next question. Something that's near and dear to my heart is I try to get comedy into different VA hospitals and get told many times as an individual, we're afraid we might trigger a veteran. So I understand the red tape and staying strong and persevering, and over time you win them over. But could you speak to silly things people do to military and veterans that do trigger us?
Well, I mean, it just people just ask dopey questions. The number one being, did you ever kill anyone? Right. So, and again, I'm not going to make, every time, combat, when, when the enemy dies, it's not like everybody goes through some sort of moral crisis all the time. It does, but it's a stupid question. You know what I mean? It's just a dumb question, because people who have, no one's bragging about it, or, and it could, it could trigger other things you've seen, things that have happened. War is a tragic event, unnecessary, in my opinion, event, but tragic nonetheless. And so you see a lot of things that are going to bother you, not just, not just friends being hurt or killed or the enemy, but, you just see the people who are caught in the middle, and the horrible things that happen to them. And it weighs on you. And when you go back and forth, or you're in a profession or job like mine where it involved, rescuing wounded and hurt, and sometimes, KIAs, it weighs on you after a while. It weighs. So people just don't want to hear that dumb, that is the number one thing I'd say. Hey, don't ask someone if they killed anyone. You know what I mean? Don't, if you haven't served or anything, don't come up and start talking to a guy with the jargon that you heard, like, how's it over there with the Hajis and blah, blah. It's irritating. It's not that it's triggering, it's irritating. You know what I mean? And as far as triggering goes, again, I'm not a professional. Anything could trigger anyone. A car backfiring could trigger anyone. Driving, certain things make guys remind them of IEDs. Trash cans floating across the road, a dead animal because they used to put IED. So it could be anything. It's just be normal. Veterans we're not damaged people. You don't have to talk to us like you're dealing with a mental patient. You know what I mean? Or like you're talking to your autistic nephew or whatever. We're just regular people. You talk to veterans like anybody else. I'm in, as a guy trying to pursue an acting career, and I'm not plugging that here. I'm in class with kids and people who have no knowledge or experience like mine, although there are a lot of veterans in the profession and the arts. I meet them all the time, but a lot of people I meet have no experience like mine. I just interact with them normally. It's not a problem. We like football. We like baseball. We like certain foods. Certain people have interests. I like to cook. I talk to people about cooking. So you don't have to walk on eggshells just like anyone else. Just, I think it's a silly question. Hey, did you kill anyone? No, you can say, were you in combat? Yeah, they'll tell you. And you know what? Everybody's different. Some guys will like to tell war stories and stuff like that. Other guys may not. Like me, I tell stories about funny stuff that happened, just crazy stuff we did and I did, and the way times I got in trouble, or tell stories about burning our own poop, or just stuff like that. I mean, everybody's different. Just treat them like you would anybody else. They'll and if you have a question, ask it. Just don't ask ask them what they did, what their job was, what it was like, whatever you want. Just, did you kill anyone? It's kind of silly. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I love doing comedy. Sometimes I'll walk through the halls of a VA and let family members know I'm there, and if they want to invite me into the room to do comedy. And one time I got to do comedy for a man that was in the VA waiting for 3 months for knee replacement because they couldn't get the part.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And
I'm very fortunate because since I'm retired military, I don't have to deal with the VA very often. So I'm very fortunate. But I hear all the horror stories from friends of mine, and the VA tries its best. They're a bureaucracy. They're limited in funds. They do the best they can. But it's just like I said, and it's just one man's opinion. I just don't think even in Western nations we're equipped to take care or have prepared to take care on the back end of what we're doing. In other words, we're great at saying, okay, we're going to fight this war on terrorism. We're on year 20 now, and we've got a machine that we could grind out. We create the finest warriors on the face of the earth, but we don't have any real methodology for working that on the back end, saying, okay, you just did this work for us, and now we're going to try to do this work for you. And we haven't got there yet. We keep trying. I don't think there's a lack of people really trying to do this, because there isn't. No. It's just we just haven't got there yet.
I know there's a lot of our brothers and sisters, veterans, that are homeless, because sometimes a good alternative to suicide is just giving up and being homeless.
Listen, I mean, that's an epidemic too, veteran homelessness. None of this is made any easier by COVID, because the enemy, of the veteran is isolation. The enemy of a veteran with PTSD or post-traumatic stress is isolation, and COVID certainly hasn't helped with that. So I think we've seen a bit of a spike in both suicide and homelessness, and guys losing their jobs. I know fellow veterans who've lost their jobs. And I'm not just talking about guys at menial or non-professional jobs. I'm talking about, I have friends of mine who are airline pilots, just across the board, guys in the corporate world. So just across the board, it's been tough. And again, the isolation, not being able to be around your brothers and sisters or even your own family has made it worse. So yeah, none of this is helpful. Again, it's just awareness, helping fund these organizations that are out there doing the best they can to help veterans, and just being cognizant about it and understand that, veterans are not, my biggest problem is that the thing that's been perpetuated as far back as Vietnam is that veterans are damaged somehow, and that veterans are a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Despite everything we're talking about, the vast majority of veterans integrate back into society and their families, and are extremely competent and productive members of society, contributing to the greatness of America every day. So that's the vast majority, but there are some who need help, and we need to be there to help them. So the image of the damaged veteran is my biggest problem. Even with me, people are they're scared to talk. I'm like, I mean, it's sometimes silly, and I get it. They're scared to say the wrong thing, or they're, I don't know, they think they're going to trigger you, or, it's silly, but that bothers me. Like I said, treat a veteran as you would anyone else that you're meeting, that you're, that you come in contact with. No different.
Yes. I hate the stigma around any kind of mental issues. And if somebody's a military veteran and they went through things like any other human being. And I have mental issues probably since birth. My parents went through the Holocaust. Give me a break. And so the thing is that when we have anything we've been through that we're willing to say we're struggling with, then we open up ourselves. Like whenever there's a shooting, it seems like they can't wait to find out if it was a military person that went postal.
Yeah. They do that all the time. And again, those are the things, listen, I'm not going to rail against the media. I'm not here to do that, but they certainly don't do any favors. Every time there's a shooting, within 10 minutes, so-and-so was armed. And then they find out the person barely made it through boot camp, or was kicked out, or was not, their military service was problematic from the beginning. And so, they were considered off by the military. You know what I mean? So, yeah, there's a lot of stigma. Certainly I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to change it. We can do the best we can, but it's just, it's silly. Like I said, the vast majority of veterans transition fine. They become, contributing members of society. And again, I also, like I said, I mean, anyone who's gone through a significant trauma is going to have those same kind of issues. You know what I mean? So, if you've been in a bad car accident, or you've had family members die unexpectedly, or you victims of sexual abuse, or mental abuse, physical abuse, all those things, they have the same end result. And those of us are, that try to think outside the box know that, it's not mutually exclusive to veterans. And I talk to people again with MVP and the athletes, just talking to athletes. They were never in the military, but we can sit there and talk and go, yeah, that's what that was like, or that's what that was like, or when this is what I felt like. And it's the same exact thing. So, that's it. So I, as a guy who I think has been fairly lucky in my transition, I just want to be there, and take opportunities like you're offering me to just say to people, hey, if you can help out by donating to these organizations, or just be aware of this is going on out there, and just, understand that, veterans don't want a free ride. We don't want to be, we're not looking to be thanked and people to put us on a pedestal or any of those things. Just want to be like anyone else, and that's kind of awareness I'm trying to raise,
Thank
and
you so much for coming on. I would be remiss if I don't do two things before we end, besides thanking you from the bottom of my heart and holding back tears 75% of the time during this.
I appreciate the opportunity to kind of spread the word. And again, I appreciate you offering me your platform to put the word out there.
Come back anytime,
Thank
So
you.
you guys, if you think any symptoms of look them up. If you think you have any symptoms of PTSD, get on it. I waited 36 years to get help and it was almost too late. So it can get worse if you don't get on it. So if you think you got some symptoms, reach out, and please consider donating or helping with two organizations mentioned here by Yonel Dorelis, irreverentwarriors.com and mergingvetsandplayers.com. Please spell Irreverent Warriors.
You're asking me to spell in public. That's really a bad thing. It's IRREVERENT, I believe. The word irreverent, for those of you who are smarter than me, the word irreverent and then warriors together, one word.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. All right. Thank you, Linda. Have a great day.
Thanks for coming on.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Yonel. Yonel Dorelis. Thank you.